Different tonight. We're going to have our pledge of allegiance, so if everybody would stand. Parish is going to do some pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Parish.
Sir.
Okay. We have the agenda in front of us. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay. Can I have approval of the amendments, of the minutes from January the 11th? Hope everybody's had a chance to look over that. I've read it a couple times. Motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand by aye. All hands are unanimous. Okay. There's no really old business at this time, so we'll just step right into the new business. With that, we're going to talk about the bylaws. And I want to really appreciate Dave and Parish working on this, getting into this and getting us straight on this. And we found a couple more things that we need to look into. But Parish and you, Dave, I'll let y'all talk and we'll go from there.
Sure. Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So just before we move into that real quick, this, I don't know if this is necessary or not, but it just made me feel a lot better knowing that we did it. We made a motion, approved a motion and voted to change the regular meetings of the authority to the fourth Monday in every month at 5:30 p.m. From a bylaw perspective, it would make me feel better if we did that specific to the actual article and section in our bylaws, in our current bylaws, before we get into discussion of our new bylaws. So I'm going to make a motion that we amend the current bylaws of the authority, Article 1, Section 3, to read regular meetings of the authority shall be held on the fourth Monday in every month at 5:30 p.m.
Parish, if I may, Article 3, Section 1. Dyslexia got you for a moment. You said Article 1. It's Article 3, Section 1.
Yes.
Of the current bylaws?
The one you have, I'm assuming proposed that I'm looking at here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at too.
No, I'm talking about these current,
Okay.
the current
As
bylaws.
current?
Yeah, the ones that we've not yet adopted these.
Gotcha.
So I was going to amend the current bylaws that
Gotcha.
are still in place, which, yeah, should be Article 1, Section
Yes.
3 under regular meetings. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion?
Give it a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous, okay. All right.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. So with respect to the bylaws that that Dave and I have worked on, what you see in front of you is, or what's been given to you is sort of a combination of language that is used in other authorities' bylaws, particularly the city of Washington was one that I drew from, Bainbridge, and one other I can't put my hand on it right now. And Livonia were the three, not used exactly verbatim in every single situation, but did feel that that the scope of these bylaws definitely puts us in a much better position to govern ourselves than where we've been in the past. A few things that obviously need to be discussed and decided here tonight. One would be putting these bylaws in front of counsel, legal counsel, to be sure that we're compliant in all areas. Also, there's a few blanks. For example, I did not have the date that the DDA was established by the Jasper City Council. That needs to be added under Article 1, Section 4. There's also the matter of the current treasurer position, which we do not have in place. And, I made some comments, which are in parentheses in the copies that you have. We don't have a treasurer currently, and I did see where there are instances where an executive director position, which would be probably a hired position, acts as treasurer. There are other instances where the secretary treasurer role is put together. So that would be one area that we would need to finalize before, again, giving it to legal counsel, and then back to us for approval. The other small technical issue is under, let's see, Article 3, Section 8, which moves on to page 4, rolls over to page 4. That has to do with remote participation. There's some language in bylaws about joining a meeting by telephone. And this was updated to include, instead of telephonic, we reference video conference in that particular instance. The rest, I think, kind of speaks for itself, unless there's any questions. Dave, if you have any input in addition to that, we can entertain questions.
Yeah, some of it was just a matter of updating the language. Like Parish said, telephonic versus video conference, obviously with the technology the way it is. The one thing we've got to decide too, and again, we might need to run this through the legal process or what have you, but as far as the officers are concerned, if we've got a board with 7, if we have a chair and a vice chair, and then we have a secretary and a treasurer that are separate, it's not the same position, then all of a sudden you run into the fact that if you're going to have an executive meeting, you've got a quorum because you've got 4 people. So that's why, as like Parish said, I mean, in some DDAs they have a hired person that takes on that role of treasurer, and others, though, if we keep it with the board, kind of like our current makeup right now, a lot of them have the secretary and the treasurer position combined, which I wouldn't force that on Amy being the secretary. But again, in regards to the signatures, with the way the bank account and everything's set up right now, it actually, you kind of are serving somewhat as the treasurer, de facto, even though you don't maybe necessarily have that title. So you are kind of doing that job anyway. But those are just some things in the language, because if it's a situation where the executive committee wants to meet, then we got to keep that to 3. Otherwise, if that's a 4th person, then that may constitute as a quorum.
Wasn't there some discussion in the planning session about the city maybe possibly being our treasurer of this through budgeting? Did I not hear that?
You did.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So I don't know if that affects that decision about the bylaws. I don't, that may be
solve
that
the
higher
problem,
person.
not
That's
solve
solve
the
the
problem.
problem. Right. I know that was offered at the session that we talked about. So I didn't know if that had anything to do with.
One other thing that was brought up also within this is that the treasurer has to do an audit and report our financial being to whoever, the government. And so I think at this time, the city is doing that presently. Somebody from the city is doing that already.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the city currently has staff working on that from our administration. What I would look at, board, is when you're reviewing the bylaws, if you have questions, specific recommendations, certainly give them to the committee to report over. I like the idea of passing this through legal counsel. Those questions, Mr. Lowrie, can go straight through legal counsel. And as far as that position, it could be worded through the verbiage. If legal counsel signs off, that the city could provide that for us. Absolutely.
That's been done in the past, right, Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, so with
That's
that,
the problem.
yeah, that's satisfied with that. And when I was going through this and reading this, I know Parish, she said, we're not even governance, and so I started reading, and sure enough, I was worried about that until I found out today that the city was already promoting the financial records to government and so on the other reports, so that cleared that up. Any other discussion?
The only other discussion I bring to the board is Article 2, Section 5, in reference to attendance and director removal. I'll be shooting you an email, Mr. Parish.
Okay.
Section 5 refers to director removal for absence of 3 regular meetings for a period of any 12 months. It says without proper cause. Legal's probably going to want a definition of what proper cause is, what defines that. So I'll send that to you in writing. That was my only discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
One other section that we added to was assignment of duties, Article 5, Section 5. And this is in keeping with the consistency of our work session and so forth. Just talking about, just kind of making a point that the chair may assign duties to any officer from time to time. And also that we added in there about, I think it's over on page, somewhere on the next page, Section 6, talking about committees as well. We added that in to talk about the fact that we're able to form committees either ad hoc or long-standing, depending on the scope of whatever project we take on there. And that was something that was absent from the original bylaws that we had here, but that was something that we took from some of the other PDAs as well. So I just kind of wanted to point that out because I know that we're talking about having some different folks serve on some different things, and so that kind of, at least that kind of states it officially in our bylaws, at least that we have it spelled out that way. So.
And then one additional thing too, under Article 6, Section 1, we're proposing moving the fiscal year of the DDA from its current June to May timeframe to a calendar year, January to December.
That will align with the city.
That was one thing I was gonna ask, because I didn't know if y'all were June or whatever, like the government is a lot of entities, but okay. So that's, I'm glad y'all brought that up, because that was one of the things I wanted to ask. Any other further discussion? Okay, with that, again, Parish and Dave, thank y'all for doing that. Okay, so we're going to review the strategic plan, of which there's a lot there. I don't know if, so I think we got those in the last couple of days. There's a lot to do here, and it's going to take us some time to weed through this. But I would like for y'all to make any comments about what you have on your minds with the strategic plans, the goals, and the strategies that we're going to foresee in the future. Anybody got any comments? It's a good guideline for us to stay focused. I really think Tara and Elizabeth did a great job. Tara Bradshaw, by the way, did a great job of keeping us on line and on track and focused and going forward. But there's a lot here. And anybody else got any comments? It was a long day, but it was a great day, and I think it's going to be a great day in our future. So with that, if nobody has any other comments, we'll move on to the update for the task force for second Saturday with Marty Callahan.
Okay, does everybody have a copy of the notes? We had a preliminary first meeting with 5 business owners in downtown. We had that on the 18th, and the notes are there of who participated. And we talked about, I gave them the dates that we were proposed that we look at having our second Saturdays, the 5/14, 6/11, 8/13, and the 9. Well, I left out the 7/9, which is going to be in the notes, but that's the July event, and there's August 13th. The 9 and 10, I put a question mark by because the 9, the long table would be a conflict with that one, so probably not going to look at the 9. We talked about that not being the date of the G Fest, and then Oktoberfest would be the October one. And then we talked about having a theme of each one, like maybe having just music for one of them, and then having a music and arts festival for another one. You know, sort of have a theme and throughout the day, instead of having just a band and music for all of them. A different, maybe have a competition cooking or something like that, but possibility for one of those two. The focus of the events would be downtown business area and the owners and tenants of that. There's a lot of trying to get off key with other things going on, but I try to keep it focused. We talked about vendors, we're not gonna ask vendors at this time, because we wanna see what we need to do without vendors, and they were okay with that. They did talk about sharing, possibly with us, but business sharing together on the same spot. Give you an example, a lunchbox, thought wanted to consider serving out in front of the brewery, you know, on the brewery's property. So it's a sharing amongst business owners that we already have, not sharing, you know, that had to be a licensed business owner, and if they wanted to share in an adventure, that would be fine, but that's not considered bringing in a vendor. And then we talked about who else we could involve, and there's a list of folks there that we thought would do that. We talked about issues with street closure. We told them that we didn't want to look at street closing for the first time if we could get it. And the question was brought up too, if we had a band, would we be able to have the event inside the yellow barricades as they are now and still have enough room? So that would be, that's a question I would like to have going forward, answer Friday, take after our next meeting. A budget, we talked about a budget of about $6,000. There's a breakdown there of income and expense. Expenses include water toilets, event banners, advertising, sponsors, and those type of things. So then talk about sponsor levels and sponsor dollars to help on the income side. So this is our notes. We did have another meeting set for the 4th, which is this Friday at 8 o'clock. If anybody would like to come, it's at Red Bean Coffee, and I expect to have a list of those folks that I'm going to invite to that weren't at the first one. What's that date? This Friday at 8 o'clock, we're going to Red Bean Coffee.
Who's being invited, Marty?
There's a list there. There was the 5 of us from the first group. Was Creek, Wally Drops, Lunchbox, the auction company, and the coffee shop there. It was the first group that we had. And then we had a list of other people that would like to be invited. I'm gonna have I've got an email list started with folks that we think that might be interested or would benefit from the event.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have that out there. And then this is sort of a group to start talking about different things. And you know, so this is the update that I was charged to bring. Kirk worked on it. Kirk had conflict with that being the hiring of the city, but it's going so far pretty good. I've heard a lot of people talking about already what they've talked about you know, what we'd like to do, and you know, more details to come. So, any questions?
What are their expectations of the EDA in this?
Well, it's still to define
Still
what,
talking through it.
right? Yeah, I mean, a sponsorship of it. I'm hoping that because they're the ones going to benefit as much as we would as the DDA from it. I'd like to see them kind of take ownership of it more and have, you know, even a committee of officers of some type of how they would take it on, and you know, and let me and Kirk be the sounding board from this group and people in the city, and then we can kind of sit down and look at what we need to do going forward with each group. We've got, you know, a little over 90 days to do it and kind of set it up. So, but they're wanting to do it. There's a lot of buy-in to do it, I think, and I think there's always some excitement. Of course, there's going to be questions, and does anybody have any questions they'd like permission to make?
Little nuts and bolts question, have you talked about weather contingency, like say we really, sometimes we have severe storms that time of year, if you have a ban, are we going to have some good heavy tents available from the city or something, or what's the plan there?
That's the details to come. I mean,
Yeah,
that would be a rain date, you know, it would probably be the next Saturday. I mean, if you're gonna set one up, you know, or you just cancel it, not do it that time. You know, that's something we've got to look at and discuss and talk about as far as, you know, contingency plans for that. But that's one thing, rain events, that you're definitely right about that.
One of the things, I met Friday with Green Souls and another gentleman in town, and we met at the Mill House, and we were talking to them about it, and they've got a lot of people that are playing bands now, and they're not expensive.
Right.
$150, $200, $300, and there's different kinds of bluegrass, whatever you want.
Right.
So that might be somebody for y'all to talk to. She said, we're turning bands away.
Right.
That it just took off like they would not believe, and so that's a great opportunity for us to get to them and sort of nurture this event, if you will. So
yeah, I've already started a band database of contacts, and it's scrolling. You know, and then it'll be a tough decision to make. You know,
sure.
Like we talked about the last meeting, local and authentic. You know, is what we're going to stay in the local part. You know, I'm really going to stress that the first year that we stay, and I think we won't have any problem with that. I'm even going to the point where I think we could probably bring in the schools you know, and let them, they've got choirs and the elementary schools, they can come and maybe perform in the afternoon before the event starts. And that kind of gets your parents there, and then you kind of start from there, but that's just some ideas, but, you know, there's a lot of ideas, it's just implementation and just where we go from there.
I'm gonna ask a question, and just to put this out there, because I've been asked several times. Would you like to have a band on the north side of town and one on the south side of town, in the corners or whatever?
You know, that was one of my issues that, or questions that I have, you know, is about the streets, and if, you know, if we're gonna keep within the barricades, you know, can we do that, you know, and where we would have it, that we wouldn't have to close the streets.
Right.
You know, I would, you know, there's different ways that we can look at doing it, but we gotta have the blessing to be able to do that.
I say talk about starting smaller though,
Right.
right?
And that was-
And see if we can get, see what the interest level is, I mean.
That was my question. If we could have, if you could report this back, you know, just a person or two, that would be the point of contact.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be hard to have all of these people's
Oh, yeah.
input each time. And we're only really looking at 3 dates right here, technically, 3 or 4 dates.
Yeah.
And like you said, sort of start out small, like you said, local little things, maybe not even an all-day event. I mean,
Well,
just,
the timeframe was 4 to 9 for the event itself, and then for the band to play, we were looking at maybe a 6 to 9 type thing, you know, and then having something, if we had a smaller, like an opener type act, you know, a single person sing or whatever, and then a band come on after that, but, you know, to me, the first 4, you know, we'd have one and then kind of just, you know, see how, but I believe that starting small and local is the way to go.
that's great.
Just have a guy picking a banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's seriously, almost that small
Seriously, yeah.
on the side. Yeah, and then we can have a follow-up,
Right,
you know, in September, November,
right.
you know, what's happening for the next year.
Evaluate.
How this worked and how it didn't work. Okay. Good job, Marty.
And I'm sure you'll probably have a lot of input from the businesses too. I mean, you guys
I've
meet
already had.
with them, I mean, you may have more than you want.
Yeah, well, I'm getting, it's a good group, and there's small groups, there's downtown, another group called Downtown Development that's in, you know, in there, and then we got another, you know, Jackal Merchants, but I've said, all right, we're gonna pull this together, and it's gonna fall under this umbrella if we get to go forward with this. And there's a lot of groups that are gonna have me pulling you different ways, and it's, you know, we got, like I said, we gotta have rules. And you gotta have rules, and you're gonna have to go by them, and you're gonna make some people unhappy. There's gonna be some people that wanna, you know, have different opinions, but, you know, I've already had a question of somebody on the, you know, if on the other side of town from where Seagull Drive is, say, well, what, you have a thumb down there, what's the issue of, why can't we have anything on this end? I'm like, well, if we get Perrow Park moving and we have bands down there, what are you gonna say then? Well, you're gonna have bigger bands down your end of the town. So, like, it's a win-win for everybody, and that's the whole part of, I hope this is, you know, what we're trying to do.
Is there anything about expanding other than just music, like, and I'm just putting this out there because again, I've had people asking me questions like artists, painting and all that kind of stuff, or there was something else and I can't recall what it was, but have you talked about that at all?
Haven't yet, I mean, we only had 1 hour meeting
Okay.
so far, but that's when I was talking about the themes of them. I mean, I've had different things from cooking things to, you know, the
That was
springs,
another
I believe the fall, it's the spring events that we're sort of just we've always been kind of after, you know, so there's all kinds of different things. I mean, you could have the cooking, chili cook-offs, you could have the
Right.
Arts and Crafts Festival, it could be, you know, that's what I'm talking about, having a theme of it, but you don't have to, you could have music at any of them, but you could have different events and different things.
Well, that's, you said, Terry, and there's a place north of town, which me and you know about, it's, this has a chili cook-off, and we could do that, but anyway,
Sure.
I'm glad you're exploring all options, and that's what we want, that's what we're about, and that's what we're gonna do to move forward, so.
Chair, before we move on, if I may, from the task force viewpoint, budgetary constraints are going to be a concern. As the board moves forward, no matter what your items may be, the item before this is one item on the agenda. The strategic plan lays out steps we're taking to better our community. We have the paperwork, we have the ideas in front of us. So the steps to get there is all going to be through budget. Through the task force budget items with prices associated with quotes coming in, that's wonderful information to have. So when this board and body's prepared to approach the city council as far as a budget on an annual basis. Second Saturday would be one line item, X dollars, based upon the breakdown. I think we do the same thing for the strategic plan. So, wonderful work. I think what you do from here is move on with actual dollars and cents. Come back with more information, and this board needs to prepare to approach the council for funding. So before we get in the weeds of who's doing what, music, chili, whatnot.
If
Budget.
we're funding anything.
Right.
I mean,
So
there
let's
may not be
focus in on that.
a-
If the task force doesn't mind approaching it from that standpoint,
Sure.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure. And then the next meeting we'll have, within 2 weeks, this has been pulled off. So I think within the next 30 days, we'll have a whole lot more details and a lot more numbers that we can present. But I will definitely get back the next meeting for this to present for this. This was more of the details that are needed to be, exact cost. I've got a lot of the costs, but we haven't finalized any, the sponsors, the different levels of doing it. Just depends on what we think we can collect.
And if I may, Chairman, with the task force, Kurt and Marty, I would, like you were kind of trying to rein us back in just a little bit, I would like for us to be a united front in the community, so when we are asked these questions, we're able to give the same answer as much as we possibly can. So I would like that kind of
Sure.
an answer, when somebody said, can we have a chili cook-off, can we have a whatever, I would like for all of us, when we ask those questions, to be able to say, not this year, but let's write this down for next year, whatever it may be. I would like for, if you can, just email us that,
Sure.
come up with something, just, a 2-line verbiage that we're all happy united front, that we're not out,
Right.
stepping out of our boundaries here.
Sure. We don't-
United front.
Right.
Okay.
We definitely can. And I think this group is, we got the group I talked to, and I believe this next, I think we'll have a lot more interest in it, and have a little more details. But I want them to have more buy-in too. And I think we're gonna maybe be a spearhead of this, but I think the buy-in's gotta come from them for it to really,
And so that's this Friday at 8 o'clock at the coffee place.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of the Perrow Park Committee. In the past, there's been 3 of us on this board that have been on this board, and I don't know if we need to adopt this, or do y'all want to adopt, or do y'all want to vote on new people on this park committee? I know I've talked to council, Sonny, and another council, Jim Looney, and we all 3 have been on this Perrow Park committee for a long period of time, and we initially started this, and we'd like to continue, but I want to put this out in front of everybody and hear y'all's points and views.
So, Chair, the way I see it, the city's moving forward on the Perrow Park area, large plans laid out there. The original committee did include these 3 individuals on this body. At this time, if you're willing to entertain a motion, I'd make a motion that we allow the 3 to serve on that committee.
And by the 3, we mean Jack, Amy, and Marty, correct?
Yes.
So we got a motion,
I'll second.
okay? All those in favor? Unanimous? Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Mm-hmm.
And thank everybody. This is, me and Amy, there's 3 or 4, or there's actually 5 of us. It's our little baby, as we say it. And we just want to continue on and go forward with it, because it's going to be something special. All right, let's see. Okay, committee reports, business development, Amy Leake and Marty Callahan.
What you got, Marty?
Well, we've talked about the properties that is the development committee. I think before we develop anything new, we'd like to know, just confirm and be clear to what we have. And Amy, you want to start with that part of it?
Sure. So we, according to the Pickens Tax Assessor's website, it is still listed that we, as a DDA, own 36 East Spring Street and 67 South Main Street. we just sold, I guess, deeded over that property to the city of Jasper. That's what's gonna be what we refer to as Perrow Park. So we're gonna not even include this in our inventory is what we're trying to call it. So the only two other properties that is listed is, and what's listed as our actual address, which is 200 Burnt Mountain Road. That is, somebody help me with that property. We have 82 acres that we have off of 200 Burnt Mountain Road. I don't know if that's where the water tower is.
That is the creek bottom.
That is the creek bottom. We have a lot of property out at the creek bottom.
Yeah,
So-
I think you own the mine.
Okay, we have that.
Yep.
We also have 490 Liberty Lane, which is what I call the Cub Scout hut. And in our name is formerly known as 55 Dixie Street, which is now Greg Lovell, what was it? GG Lovell Street. So as of right now, in the DDA inventory, we only have 3 properties in our name.
We also own
And
the
Stanley
property.
Drive. I did omit that, I'm sorry, thank you, Parish.
What was that name?
Stanley Drive,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
We own, excuse me, the property on the other side of the bridge, which is where they, a lot of people do their gardens. So it's on both sides of that, just want people to know that.
As regards to the DDA, the next, I guess, report I would give fell under a line item in our strategic plan, not only to make an inventory of DDA properties, but city properties as well. So I have a hard copy, not a digital copy yet, started of all of Main Street properties from, I guess, 105 North Main all the way to, I guess, the Progress Office. You know, between 61 Main and the Progress Office, for lack of better terms. So that will also be we will be able to identify properties that can be obtained.
Question
So,
for the committee.
I'm sorry?
Question. Property in the DDA's name, you have listed property's been paid off, need transferred back into the city of Jasper's name. The 82 acres at Cove Creek and Pool Land, 93 South Main Street. Is the intent to get a motion to have that passed back to the city?
Not at this time, if I'm correct about that.
Yeah.
Right, Marty?
All right.
We're just identifying what we own.
Okay,
Just to make a point.
okay.
Yeah, just a list of inventory, which was on that strategic plan. Just a
Okay.
simple list of inventory. Some baby steps, we gotta identify what we have and what is even available before we move forward. Does that help answer the
It
question?
does. The next item is the city's checking to see if the below property has been paid off. You've got Stanley Drive and Liberty Lane. Who's our point of contact at the city we're working with on that? Would that be legal or is that you, Mayor?
So what are you trying to do there? What's your intention?
It's saying the city's checking to see if the below property has been paid off. The city's actively looking into that?
No, but we can start, but Lindsay would be your point of contact.
Okay.
Is
And
that
then we're
something
deciding-
Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Is that something you would like for me to check into?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What was going on with this was Mayor and everybody else out there was we were just trying to identify the properties that DD owned. And so there was several members wanted to know what we did own, and so that's why we started reviewing this, so that's where that came from.
And also, are we protected as owners of those properties too? Do we have any reason not to be protected? I mean, it's our own body of the DDA. Are we covered as far as anything that would happen on those properties that that the city would not be, we need to be taken care of?
I think that'd be a discussion for a later time.
Okay, we'll make a note of that.
Okay. Is that all you got as far as the properties?
Yes.
And as far as the development, we're talking about projects that we want to pursue and look at, you know, that we talked about that in our strategic planning session, the properties that, how do we go forward to do that? We've not purchased anything, and, you know, there's a process of buying property, but we need a process of doing that ourselves. So if you look at page 8 of our strategic planning session, the next steps is to create a work plan. That is a pretty good start. If we have a property that we identify, and how do we want to move forward if we do want to do that? I know that's maybe down the road, but if we find something by next meeting, you know, this is the work plan we need to do. And then also we have a sheet that's in our packet called the Goal Action Implementation Plan, which is similar to it, but it's a little different. So I'm just sort of need to know which way is our development committee that we're going to develop going forward to, we have a property, does it need to come to the development committee to start with, or does it need to come to the board as a whole?
Say what you said again, Marty.
So does the development committee need to bring recommendations to the board for property to start a work plan, or do we have, does all board members participate in that?
Well, as chairman, I think you would need to bring that before the committee.
Sure.
Let's discuss it that way. We'll go that way.
Just before we do it in a public forum.
Sure.
Because this needs to be set up, this will be
Yes.
steps, this needs steps before we bring it to
Exactly.
the board.
It just,
This is a good step.
The goal action implementation form.
Exactly.
Okay.
it's just like when I went out on my own and did the lights, and that come back and go through the proper procedures.
Right.
So
Right.
I bring that up because I did it wrong to begin with, so this is what we gotta do.
That's really good.
Is your committee just the two of you right now?
Our two, yeah, right. And then we'll expand, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
is it start there?
Right.
We bring it as the committee to the board, or
Right.
we, you know, I don't have one today to bring it to the, you know, I don't think we may have a property today that we want to do, but we'd like to know the steps for the future that we do.
And may I
Yes.
proceed a little further, because I assume once the bylaws are done, the bylaws are done. I mean, there's no more amending, so that would free up Dave and Parish and Brad or whomever to join forces, as long as there's not 4 of us.
Sure,
So maybe
Absolutely.
keep that in the back of your minds.
absolutely.
Okay, as we move forward.
Yes,
Right.
and I think that's gonna be expansion on every one of those.
Now we have a work session to go by in our plans.
Right.
And the plan comes up with the ideas of doing it.
Sure.
Okay.
I think
Any other
that's all-
comments?
I think that's all I've got.
Good job, Marty.
Good job, both of you.
Thanks.
Okay. With that, does anybody else got, excuse me, anybody else got any comments about anything we've talked about or in the future?
Next item's for adjournment.
Yep, so with that,
Tell me the date, our next meeting.
next meeting date is, let me just get that right quick. So I guess I sent Terry in here.
right on my head.
There you go.
What?
March 28th.
Monday, March 28th.
March 28th. Anything else? Amy?
I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, can I have a motion that we adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Paris, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you. Great meeting.